2. Anyway.
Spaztique, you know who we forgot to add in that cook-off? Marcel Toyne. He would be a very good competitor in that. A worthy opponent indeed. Anyway, this is Steve the Human.
And Spaztique.
And we're going to do our end rants. But we're gonna go shiki-aki on y'all. Me, then him.
Yes.
Anyway, about this story. Now, let's start with me. So, about, this fic we've been riffing so far. If you want a succinct review of it, here it is. What I read. Lost in Gensokyo / Toho Ansatsujiken serial assassination case. / Toho Shinryaku Gensokyo invaders. / the artist formerly known as Lost in Gensokyo. What I expected. CSI Gensokyo. What I got. Travelogue of Touring Gensokyo. And Gensokyo Modern Warfare. And everything happening at once at the end. Because it couldn't happen one at a time throughout the story, throughout these 2,000 words, 20,000 words. For a thorough analysis, this fic is a borefest filled with throwaway plots and conveniences for the author avatar. It's obvious wish fulfillment to the point of public masturbation. To break down the major problems, 1. The main character is such a Mary Sue. We're talking Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Ways and Ronan Beelzebub's love child. If you want more info on why your character is Sue, there are several web pages floating around the internet discussing it. My favorite is the interactive Mary Sue litmus test, where you can have a relatively objective analysis of just how much of a Sue any given character is. Ding! And you should link it in the description of this video, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Ding! So much boring, pointless dialogue. Think about it like this. Do people talk like this in real life? Even if what they were saying was grammatical, it would still make unrealistic conversation. Have the characters say it how a real person would say it. Ding. This fic is fraught with spoken subtext. People are saying what they're thinking, and for a mystery story, you sure are giving away a lot of information for free. Remember, in real life, there's a filter between what people think and what they say. Have the characters have that same filter. Ding. Brevity is the soul of wit. You know who said that? William Shakespeare! And I think he knows a little more about writing than you do, pal, because he invented it, and then he perfected it so that no living man could best him in the Ring of Honor. But enough quoting a video on the internet. My point is that the verbosity of this writing dilutes its impact. Study and practice the art of saying so much with so little. So much pointless stuff in the story. If something is not essential to the story, then don't mention it. Here's a test you can do. Remove a sentence, phrase, paragraph, whole section from the story. Then see how it changes the story. If it doesn't, then leave it out. A whole lot of stating the obvious. Don't assume that your audience is stupid. That insults their intelligence. Besides, the day might come where people who know better than you read your writing and make fun of it. Oh wait, that's now. Let's see. Plot holes. To where the story looks like Swiss cheese. Most of our, wait, what moments came from one of them. Proofread your story to make sure that one part doesn't contradict the other. Ding. You didn't do the research, City Slicker. If you want to know what it's like to live in a small Luddite town, research the era Toho Project is based off of and what life is like in a small town. Better than any wiki or book, ask someone who lives in a small town, or even better, spend a few days in one. That'll give you an idea of what Gensokyo is like, and you'll never forget it. And you didn't do the research, computer boy. Other than that water clock, you filled the story with anachronisms. I know, that's a big fancy word.
It's pronounced anachronisms.
Anachronisms? Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was always pronounced anachronisms, but okay. Study what technology was like in 1850s Japan. I assure you, it hasn't always been robots and love pillows. Stephen King's golden rule of writing. Read a lot, write a lot. If you want to write about a genre or a setting or what have you, you gotta have extensive experience with it. I can speculate with almost complete certainty that you don't read or watch or play or listen to any mystery or suspense stories. Or whatever the stories, whatever genre the story is supposed to be. Let's see, you filed it under mystery and suspense, so I'm just gonna roll with that. My personal experience with the mystery goes as far as a few Poe short stories and CSI and CSI Miami. It's not very much, but it's enough for me to call crap on you. You can analyze what makes a good story work and even what makes a bad story not work. Writing should be a labor of love, so do it for the love of the story. And one more big bad pro tip from Steve-O. Get a beta reader! That's someone who reads your story, proofreads it, and critiques it. Their purpose is to point out big, glaring errors in private so you don't embarrass yourself in front of everyone. To top it off, hearing your story read to you will give you a whole new perspective to it and will make any problems with it more obvious. Let's see, yeah, that's pretty much all I said.
Alright, so what I have to say is mainly in addition to Steve-O's points, and I just noticed my microphone's coming in much quieter than Steve-O's this whole time. I just hope it turns out much better in the final recording. Alright, adding on to Steve-O's points. On Mary Stews and Marty Stews. These poorly written characters spawn from the writer focusing far more on the plot than the characters, and not in the sense that the story is more driven by events than character action, because there are stories that take control out of the characters' hands and work. War of the Worlds in any of their incarnations, Moby Dick, Independence Day as campy as it is, and so on. What I mean is that the plot feels more like a checklist to prove how awesome the character is than an actual plot. Nothing stops them, nothing gets in their way, the first thing they do is the right choice, never have any major emotional events. Anything that does get in their way is solved by a deus ex machina, i.e. something just happens that just clears any problems out of the way instantly. And any events that do happen are based on major cliches on other stories where they did work, but because they're taken out of context, they don't work. Even perfect characters face problems. Luke Skywalker, he's like a big action hero in the Star Wars series, but his parents, like step-parents were murdered, his mentor's killed, he faces death multiple times, he gets his leg wrapped around by that trash monster, the Diagna I think it's called, and almost drowned. In fact, Mark Hamill himself bursted a blood vessel in his eye during that scene. He's gunned down by stormtroopers every other second, he's almost killed in a dogfight. Almost stopped by a giant walker. But he pulls through anyway, and that's what makes him a hero. As I mentioned in the previous fic, Superman faces problems. He has infinite powers, but there is a way to stop him. I think Kay mentioned that Indiana Jones plows through as many scary situations as he can until he gets his MacGuffins and whatnot. He may seem invincible, but he is not. He takes challenges with stride. In fact, let's get biblical here. Let's take the ultimate perfect character. Jesus Christ of Nazareth. A guy who has a religion built around him as the perfect character. But let's take a look at context. The guy is born into a nation turning into a dystopia. If you, in Mark, they mention how, I think it's Mark, it's either Mark or Matthew. One of them is
the
just
Q document.
What?
In the Q document.
Basically, one of them's a straightforward narrative, and one of them puts it into the context of Israel. And basically, at this point, Israel has fallen into ultimate sin. The king is ordering the murder of every child to keep his reign, so this new Messiah won't supplant him, and the religious leaders are enforcing all these laws that are driving away the populace and harming the followers. So here we have a guy, Jesus, who's going against all this hypocrisy to heal as many people as he can against all these Sabbath rules that say, oh, you can't heal people on the Sabbath, you can't help the Gentiles, you can't do this, that, or the other. And he's like, screw that, let's make some miracles happen. And you know what he gets for this? Crucified. All the religious leaders are like, you know this Jesus fella, he's breaking all the rules, he's helping people, he's doing good things. This guy's a heretic, we need to get rid of him. And let's see, what else happens? And yeah, they plan his murder, and they eventually succeed with it. But even after a revive, he tells the followers, okay, here's what we need to do. We need to go out and make all the nations of the world do this whole heal people, get followers, heal more people cycle. And his followers are like, okay, so when are you going to come and start this Roman revolution, overthrow the Romans? And he's like, no, guys, pacifism, good things, the repent and produce fruit cycle, something. In fact, in one of the Pauline letters, Paul writes about, like, another thing. Let's see. Oh yeah, I forgot a point here. The thing about, like, Abrahamic religion versus the religions of the time was that the Abrahamic religions were about a, basically, well, I'm getting apples and oranges here. Okay, here it is. Oh yeah, it's about how the characters are perfect characters and imperfect characters. In Roman mythology, all the gods are party animals who basically help people and play tricks on people. In Abrahamic religion, God is so complex that normal man cannot comprehend him. In fact, much of the wisdom literature says you cannot figure out God, so stop trying. So basically, and here we have the Marty Stews. We have the Roman gods who are basically perfect beings, and people are trying to imitate them, but they can't because they're perfect beings, and they're not how real life works. But then we have dudes like Jesus who are like normal beings who just go out and help people, but still face conflict, and part of the whole Christian religion is basically how do we still help the world when there's all this sin and whatnot. Even the Old Testament is like Ecclesiastes is entirely about, if everything we're doing is basically for nothing, what is the point of life? I guess it's do good, follow God's commandments, and live life under the sun until you get to life above the sun. Basically the idea of you shouldn't try to be perfect, just live life under the sun. Let's see. And if you try to be perfect, to try to imitate the gods, reality ensues, which leads me back to my Pauline letter case. If people try to have sex like the gods, they have illegitimate children and STDs, which should affect these Gappy Stews like crazy. Or if we try to become as famous as the gods, we end up getting a bunch of enemies and stuff. And even Jesus, who like gets all this fame from healing all these people, it becomes the center of a murder plot. What else? Oh yeah, if we try to drink like the gods, we get alcohol poisoning. Natural order, natural law it's called, I hear, in like a lot of world religions, I believe. But also, another thing is we tend to feel sorry for people striving for something against conflict. And not in the backstory, but in the forestory, where it's actually happening. Like, if we tell people, oh, my character has such a tragic backstory. He grew up with nobody on the outside world, and everyone hates him. But now that he's here in Gensokyo, everyone loves him. He could be lying. The guy could totally be wrong, and we'd believe him, and then he'd attack us and whatnot. Again, that's that whole brain hardwired for story thing. It's, if we don't have proof of these things, we think them as lies, and we don't believe them when we ignore the story. Now, moving on to my next point, on pointless dialogue. Dialogue is a character action, and the only action you show are the ones important to the story, unless the point of the story is to show that human nature is random and pointless. Weekend by Jean-Luc Godard is a good example of this. The whole movie was designed to piss off the viewers. One of the early scenes, a character shares a long, rambling story about how she had sex, underscored by this bombastic music, simply to troll the audience. And as the story goes on, it gets more and more lewd, like another lover gets added, and they go to all these crazy positions, and the music gets louder and louder and louder to the point where the music drowns out the dialogue. And Jean-Luc Godard understood that scenes like these piss off the audience. And that's how he wrote this movie. He wrote this specifically to piss off the audience. Like, most scenes go by turning points of emotion, but this goes by turning points of, is this going to make the audience feel good, or is it going to make them feel bad? Like, just when you think it's going to start moving forwards like a conventional plot, suddenly that chick who wrote Wuthering Heights shows up and starts reading from her book to the point where it annoys the main characters, and they set her on fire. That really
Great, now I gotta see this movie.
You might want to pack some headache medicine. You said you don't like long droning sound effects, right?
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to hearing.
There's a 15-minute sequence that shows the couple driving down a traffic lane with cars blaring their horns for 15 minutes until the final payoff shows a whole bunch of children blown to bits on the side of the road.
Okay.
Chibi Rico asks what movie this is. It's Weekend by Jean-Luc Godard. It's a French film. It's part of the French New Wave, and he did it as a take that to the Hollywood film industry to show that, no, sometimes these films don't make sense. And it's advertised as a comedy, but it's kind of a comedy. It's sort of Python-esque, but really it's like a experimental piss-off-the-audience kind of film. It's French.
Yeah, that's all you just say. It's French.
No, they asked it in English, I think. No, it's in French, but still, French New Wave was designed to piss people off in one regard or another. Anyway, like I said, Jean-Luc Godard understood that these kind of scenes pissed off audiences, and he used it to write those scenes. But many novices think that people love this stuff. And here are two techniques that I use, I commonly use for dialogue that makes sense. First, I'll outline the scene, contrasting the beginning setup and the ending payoff. Then, when I'm actually writing the scene, I will either write the scene by subtext, determining the intention of the message more than the message itself, like what's being said behind the message, or write a list of actions, reactions. For example, take this. Ryo walks into his house late at night after an uneventful search, only to find Komachi wants to kill him. Ryo struggles to survive, and he does, finding out the killer didn't just exterminate the bodies, but the souls, so now it's her business as well. So we've gone from an uneventful search and being at Komachi's, held at Komachi's scythe point, to having a lead and Komachi as a ally. So something happens in that scene. Where am I? Okay. Then if a line of dialogue doesn't work, I'll ask myself, what does my character want and what will they say / do to get it? Like if, like you guys might have heard me when I'm doing my live Ustream of Diamond in the Rough, I will say, the intention of this line is to convey blankety blank blank. That's what I mean by that. Like she's trying to warn him of this, but I don't want the character to say, I'm here to warn you about this. It's going to be more subtle along the lines of, depending on how subtle the character is, what their inflection what their objective is, what they want to, how they feel about the person at that time, in the context of that scene, and so on and so forth. On realistic dialogue, in addition to the previous, here's the thing about human speech. What we intend to say and what we actually say are completely different, which is one of the reasons many of us shy types like to type text over, we like text over speech, since what is on our minds ends up on the page. In fact, I'm adding, deleting, doing all sorts of stuff in my mind in split seconds while reading this stuff and conveying it back to you, because how I interpret this message and how I say it are completely different than what's written here on the screen. And the thing is about human language is we use a lot of vague language. We delete words, we use vague verbs and pronouns, essentially thinking that people can read our minds. Like, man, I'm so happy today. Happy about what? Man, that person's so stupid. Why are they stupid? You have to justify what. Use the word. Forgetting. Forgetting's another thing that people do in their speech. Oh yeah, I'm being comprehensive, 068952. He said this is taking too long. I'll speed it up. But
yeah, it might be taking too long. But anyway.
But we do this. We do this to protect our egos, not say the things we need to say, because most of the time we assume that people will understand us, and the sad thing is they'll take us at face value and interpret entirely different messages. But the thing is, story dialogue is not designed to be realistic. It's supposed to be realistic sounding. So we can have the deletions and whatnot, but it can't be like mind reading. So between the subtext and this concept, it's best to just determine the subtext first and then come up with realistic dialogue to address this. Like, you're adding, deleting, vague language, and whatnot. On brevity and pointless stuff. Know the point and get to it. I once drew a picture of a maze with 2 routes to a fellow writer who wrote a long, rambling story that never got to the point. One route of this maze went through a long, winding, impossible to figure out maze. The other bypassed the maze completely and went straight to the ending. At the end of the maze was a large circle labeled the point of the story/scene. The point of the maze was to show that you can either write the long-winded route and get yourself stuck in a maze and possibly never get out, or you can just get straight to the point and you'll automatically satisfy yourself and other people. And the best way to do that is to outline. The best way to outline is to not only show the best way to outline is to only show the scenes where something happens. Okay, the best way out. I messed up that sentence. I've been talking.
No, you got it right.
The best way to
outline is to only show the scenes where something happens.
Yes, there we go. If your character is traveling somewhere and nothing happens on the way, it can be deleted. If your character is discussing something with another character and it doesn't serve a purpose other than an info dump, it can be deleted. If your character is getting ready for the morning, checking mail, using the bathroom, eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and nothing out of the norm happens, it can be deleted. If you want to tell me, but some good stories do that all the time, I will militantly disagree. Good stories include can include scenes that look pointless, but if you analyze them closely, they have a structure, they have beats, setups for later payoffs, and turning points that are vital to the story. Even montages serve as either an extended turning point, or they contain a bunch of beats and scenes within a turning point. And Ustreamer0689, he said that, thanks for teaching me how to not make a bad story. Well, I used to tutor this kind of stuff. Okay, where was I?
Oh, yeah. Fun fact.
Montages can either serve as a turning point or have their own turning points themselves. Oh yeah, the fun fact is, this story is, well, 20,000 words long, and it's only barely starting. A novella, this is longer than a novella. A novella is defined as 20,000 words long by Wikipedia. A novel is 40,000 words long. At the rate of things are going, this will be longer than War and Peace before it even reaches anything that resembles a midpoint.
Hey, can I say something about points in general?
Yeah?
You can't get to the point if you don't have a point. I mean, one of the problems with this guy is that he changed the title and the synopsis twice, and I think he changed the genre once. He doesn't know what he wants to do with this story. So, my advice, don't get back to writing until you know where you want your story to go, right?
Yes, and not just that, pick a genre, because genres are designed to constrict how many things can happen in the story. Like, the turning points of a comedy will be centered around something funny happening. Romance often turns on romance. Action is about often survival, and so is the horror genre. In fact, the horror genre is entirely about survival at its core. On stating the obvious, said is the only word you need for dialogue. Why? Because eventually people will ignore this and just imagine what the characters sound like in their minds. If someone says, hey, over there, you don't need to say, he said, pointing at the thing. Well, actually, no, wait. You can do that, because, like,
He actually said.
Shoot, I just... Like, it's so ingrained in my mind, I can't even do a bad example. Oh, my favorite is from...
I'm coming, Reimu ejaculated.
Yes. Or from How Not to Write a Novel. Fuck you, he profaned.
We know he profaned. We know what fuck you means.
Chibi Rico says, make a goddamn plan, draft/plan of what you want and build around that. Yes, outlining. On proofreading, research, and editing. Read the source books on Toho Wiki. Look up classic Japanese mythology and culture on Wikipedia. And get a beta reader or editor on fanfiction.net. The materials are out them, so use them. And while you're at it, just take a couple nature walks in the woods and imagine how somebody will live out there.
And that's it on our notes, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Alrighty, our final words. This is Steve-O the Human.
And Spaztique the Spaztique.
And it's almost 2 o'clock. And we started this at what, 9?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Anyway. I think that's it. And we really should stop, because this is a long one.
Yeah?
Well, Stu the Human signing out.
Good night, or good morning, rather. See
And
ya.
don't forget that Mary Sue litmus test.
Yep. Should be linked in the description below. Goodbye.